In the frozen forests of Finland, the mountains of Italy, and the endless white hell of the Eastern Front, soldiers faced a deadly enemy that no bullet could stop. Cold and frostbite claimed fingers before gunfire ever reached them. Metal helmets froze to skin. Entire units vanished overnight, not from combat, but from temperatures so low that even fuel solidified. Yet some soldiers survived when others didn't. Their secret wasn't fancy uniforms or insulated boots. It was a simple, almost primitive technique that kept men alive without modern winter gear. This was the Wendu survival hack, a method refined through necessity and experience, forgotten when the war ended, but still effective today. By late 1941, the German advance into the Soviet Union had slowed, not because of the Red Army, but because of the cold. The Wehrmacht had expected a quick victory, not a prolonged winter campaign. Temperatures dropped to minus 40 degrees Celsius. Rifle bolts froze solid. Soldiers' breath crystallized in midair. Meanwhile, Soviet troops, who had been fighting in the same brutal cold, managed to stay functional. They didn't have superior gear. They had superior knowledge. Soviet and Finnish troops had learned over generations how to survive in subarctic conditions without relying on fires or heavy clothing. Their methods became the foundation for one of the simplest but most effective survival systems ever used in warfare: the principle of natural insulation and internal heat regulation. In other words, using the body and the environment itself as a heating system. The biggest misconception about cold survival is that warmth comes from wearing more. Veterans who fought through the Arctic or the Carpathians knew this wasn't true. What mattered wasn't the number of layers, but how you manage them. The body constantly produces heat, about 100 watts when resting, and even more during movement. But if that heat escapes through sweat or wind, no amount of fabric will save you. The soldiers who survived longest learned to control their own microclimate. They stayed just cold enough to prevent sweating during exertion, then trapped their heat when resting. Finnish ski troops perfected this technique, opening coats and loosening scarves while marching, then sealing up tightly once they stopped to rest. The Soviets called it heat discipline. A soldier who sweated during the day risked freezing at night. This method outperformed even some modern gear. Today's synthetic fabrics wick moisture away, but they cannot fix the human tendency to overdress. A soldier or hiker who doesn't manage body heat properly will freeze just as fast now as they did 80 years ago. The World War II trick worked because it wasn't about gear. It was about strategy. Air is your best insulation. The real warmth comes from the thin layer of air trapped between your skin and your clothes. Soldiers used layered wool, not because it was thick, but because wool traps air even when damp. They created a thermal barrier by spacing their layers slightly: an undershirt, a wool sweater, and then a windproof outer shell made from waxed cotton or oiled canvas. Soviet soldiers even lined coats with dried grass or newspaper to increase insulation. It sounds primitive, but it worked. The grass trapped air just as effectively as modern synthetic fill. German mountain troops in the Alps used a similar technique, wearing two loose shirts with a thin air gap rather than a single heavy sweater. The goal was to let the body's natural heat radiate into that pocket and stay there. Even today, modern cold weather gear is built on the same principle. In extreme cold, even sleeping was dangerous. Men who went to bed sweating often didn't wake up. Soldiers developed routines to manage heat buildup and loss. Before bedding down, they performed light exercise, just enough to raise their core temperature, then quickly wrapped themselves in blankets or coats to trap warmth. Finnish patrols did push-ups, or swung their arms for a minute before crawling into sleeping bags, creating an internal heat reserve that could sustain them for hours. When temperatures dropped too far, soldiers relied on each other. Two men sharing a foxhole would sleep back to back under a single blanket or poncho. Their combined heat output could raise the local temperature enough to stay above freezing. It wasn't comfortable, but it saved lives. Modern survival manuals still recommend this buddy warming technique. Even the United States Army, after studying Soviet and Finnish winter tactics, adopted the same practice during the Korean War. American troops stationed at the Chosin Reservoir used these World War II lessons to endure bitterly cold nights, where temperatures plummeted to -30 degrees Celsius. Prevention of frostbite was largely attributed to heat discipline and body-sharing routines. Soldiers survived because they understood the science of their own warmth. Modern survival gear may fail, but managing your own heat can save your life. The WWII technique teaches that heat isn't provided by clothing alone. It comes from proper management of body temperature and insulation. Start cold and stay dry while moving. Loosen outer layers to prevent sweat buildup, then seal up immediately when resting to trap heat. Build insulation underneath with grass, clothing, or foam mats to double warmth. If alone, layer dry materials like paper, straw, or leaves inside your clothing. If not alone, share heat back to back or side by side to conserve warmth. These are not outdated tricks. They are still used in Arctic training and by survival experts worldwide because they work where technology can fail. Modern outdoor gear may be lighter and more advanced, but the principle hasn't changed since 1941. Warmth is earned through discipline, not fabric. The World War II survival hack that beats modern winter gear wasn't about materials. It was about understanding how the body generates and retains heat. Soldiers respected the science of their own warmth and applied it with precision. They survived not because of better equipment, but because they mastered their environment and themselves. Even today, controlling your own microclimate is critical. Layering correctly, spacing insulation to trap air, preventing sweat, and managing rest cycles all determine survival in extreme cold. This method is based on the principle that trapped air is a natural heater and can outperform modern fabrics if mismanagement is avoided. Air between layers, proper ventilation during movement, and sealing warmth during rest form the core of the Wendu technique. Adding natural insulation materials like grass, straw, or newspaper can increase effectiveness. Sharing body heat adds another level of security when temperatures are extreme. These tactics are timeless. Soldiers also learned the dangers of overexertion. Excess movement or heavy clothing could lead to sweating, which quickly leads to heat loss once stopped. Heat discipline, pacing, and careful layering were as important as any piece of gear. Even today, survival experts emphasize these same methods. The human body, when understood and respected, becomes the most efficient heater ever built. Soldiers who mastered these techniques survived extreme cold, demonstrating that knowledge, strategy, and discipline are far more important than expensive materials or advanced clothing. Modern winter gear is convenient, lighter, and sometimes more comfortable, but it does not eliminate the need to manage your own heat. Understanding microclimate, using air gaps, sharing warmth, and staying dry remain the key to survival in freezing environments. These lessons have remained unchanged for over 80 years. Warmth is earned through discipline, not fabric. The knowledge that kept soldiers alive on the Eastern Front in Finland and across the Alps is still relevant today. Mastering these principles ensures survival where technology alone may fail. Respect your body, respect the cold, and survival becomes possible. Thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe for more.